Welcome to She's a Full-On Monet, a digital lifestyle magazine for women. Every week, our editor-in-chief, Kelly Castillo, along with Megan Block and special guests, participate in a deep dive discussion about recent articles and topics we have covered. We invite you to become part of our community where everyone's welcome. You can totally sit with us.
Hello, everyone, and welcome back to She's a Full-On Monet. I'm your host, Kelly, and I have here with me Megan.
Hi, good morning.
Good morning. And this week is Megan's birthday, so we want to wish Megan a very happy birthday.
Thank you. I am 22 this week. No, I'm just joking. No, I'm good. My birthday is one of those things where it's like, oh yeah, to me, it's an excuse to be able to choose cake that I love and be able to force, because I love chocolate cake, but no one else in my family does. And one time a year, on my birthday, chocolate cake time rolls around. So I love happy. That. I love birthdays.
I do too.
You taught me very, very well that it's my special princess day. I
think
when I first met you, I had this very subdued, like view of birthdays. And then you're like, wait a minute. You totally made me feel so special. And I'm like, oh yeah, it is kind of a good day. So yeah, I'm celebrating.
Yeah, well, hopefully, we're recording this early, but hopefully you're celebrating this whole month as your birthday month, as you should.
Yes. As I should.
Treat yourself all month. Even if no one else is treating you, treat yourself. That's my
plan. I love it. I love that it goes my birthday and then Mother's Day, like the following month. It's just a solid 2-month period. And then Father's Day is always a reflection on how my birthday and Mother's Day went.
There you go.
Let's be
there's a reason Mother's Day comes first because
it's not, he's not my dad, but I mean, if I left it up to the kids to plan and pay for and take care of and conceptualize, he would get like a drawing of something. And then he'd be like, this is all I am. So yeah, it is kind of up to us a little bit.
Or some scrambled eggs with the shells in it.
Yeah. And they love that. But then they would also be like, what else? So let's see how Mother's Day goes on my birthday. But
well, Megan's birthday also happens to be Earth Day. So
yes,
we're going to call her Mother Earth.
Mother Earth.
Yes. So today we thought we would do an article kind of on the theme for this week's Earth Day. And so we're talking about what we eat and our diet and how that affects our carbon footprint. Mm-hmm. I think, more than ever seems like every year it's more and more people are talking about carbon footprints and climate change and all the ways that we can kind of do our part to help this planet not implode.
Well, I don't know about you, but it took like one scary sci-fi doomsday style movie for me to go, what can I do? I don't want to be on this planet when things start to go crazy. You know what I mean? So yeah. And on a smaller level, I just think that it's like all the things that we talk about on this podcast, the more alert and awake we are to things, the more we want to actually do something about it instead of just sit on it. I think for a while we weren't very aware of the type of decisions we were making in life in general and how that was affecting our future, or the future of our future.
Absolutely. I think I've actually, before this topic, I hadn't ever really, we've touched a little bit on like how some of the things that we eat affect, like we talked about eating locally or seasonally in a previous podcast episode. And in that episode, we touched a little bit on how that can affect, carbon emissions and greenhouse gases and things like that. But as a bigger picture of I always think about how I eat in relation to my own individual health and not the health of the planet. So I think this is an interesting topic because I assume that if I wasn't thinking that way, then there's probably a percentage of people like me who didn't really, focus on that. I focus on what I eat is what I want to eat that day and what my body needs that day, and not necessarily like how that affects.
Could you imagine a person ever that can think so far outside of themselves that they're thinking about the planet? I can't think of anyone. We're so ingrained as humans to only, it's not to our detriment. It's just how we're programmed. We're very selfish creatures. We think about our own problems, our own goals, our own needs, our own this, our own that. And if anything, maybe like our family, our children, like that's as far as our circle goes. But I would never think as far as like how my decisions are affecting the planet. Like that would never come to mind. But it's also like, if you sit back and think about it, well, why wouldn't it? You know, like why, it's such a simple idea that's never been really brought to light. If I haven't thought about it.
Yeah, I mean, I've seen a few documentaries that touch on this subject a little bit about how like mass farming and consumption of meat products and dairy products have contributed to the environment. But some of those documentaries made me shy away from eating meat because what they showed that happens in those factory farms, not necessarily like me thinking that skipping a burger is going to change the environment, you know?
Mhm.
So I think this is interesting. Hopefully everyone listening or watching this can take a little bit away from it, maybe make some small changes. Cause that's what I found works for me with things like I've done the overhaul of my kitchen and my beauty routine also to try to make it cleaner, like getting rid of a lot of the single use products or disposable products and switching over to things that are better for the environment. We're going to have some articles coming out on that topic too for Earth Day. But yeah, I mean, I don't use makeup wipes anymore. I use like the face cleaning cloths, and I typically in the kitchen use like kitchen towels versus paper towels, and reusable containers instead of like Ziploc bags and plastic wrap and things like that. So I am conscious of it in that respect, but I think it could translate over definitely more into what I'm actually buying from the grocery store versus like just the equipment and disposables that I use.
Yeah. It is a great, move in the right direction to do all the things you listed, but if you're already doing that, it's certainly there's more that can be done that if we all collectively do it can make a huge difference.
Yeah, definitely. And I think, okay, so the first one we're going to talk about, first tip we're going to talk about today, I think is the one that most people talk about when it comes to your food carbon footprint. And that is to eat less meat. That's, I mean, what most of those documentaries have kind of been pushing. And specifically red meats like beef and lamb are the two that I've heard are the biggest contributors to the greenhouse gases, whereas like chicken, fish, and eggs tend to be less of an impact on the environment. But they say that the agriculture industry of livestock farming contributes about 15 to 18% of all of the greenhouse gas emissions of the world. So that's a pretty big number.
That is a really big number.
Yeah, I guess. I mean, I know that they like have to clear away a lot of land for agriculture to happen. Specifically like the beef industry, they need to graze regularly and they have to move them pasture to pasture. So it's an incredible amount of land that needs to be cleared for that. But I've heard a lot of like vegetarians mention this as one of their reasons for being vegetarian, is because, cutting out meat and dairy can be the single biggest way to reduce your impact on the planet as a consumer. So that's a pretty big deal. It said, I've read a statistic that said that we could reduce the total amount of land used for farming by 75% and still feed everyone on the earth if we cut meat out of our diets. So we could literally have 75% less farms, less farmland, and still everyone would be fed. That's pretty crazy.
I don't know about you, but the older I get, the less I like the taste of meat. Like I don't eat a lot of meat. I don't know about you and your personal diet.
No, I don't.
But I used to eat a lot of meat when I was not a kid, but yeah, we would have like a protein source on our plate and then we would have like a grain and a vegetable. We still generally eat that way now. But we stick to a lot of like chicken and fish. The red meat, I know it to be is not so great for your heart. So we don't introduce a lot of that into our diet personally at home. But I find now that when I eat steak, like I don't enjoy the taste of it or like the process of it or like anything. I was just wondering if it was like more just like the older you get, the less you appreciate the taste of it, because like a burger, I'll still eat a burger though.
Yeah, I mean,
like
that's the
there's
thing.
certain things that I'm like, oh, burger though, and bacon and like, but like I
Yeah.
could do without other things just fine because I'm already kind of naturally gravitating that way anyway. But this just makes me want to do it more.
I never ate like steak or or pork or lamb or anything like that in my regular diet. I never have since I was, as long as I can remember at least.
Really?
Yeah. But I will occasionally eat a burger or something with ground beef in it. And that doesn't seem to bother me.
Yeah, the ground up thing is like, I'm cool with.
Yeah. I've always just disliked the texture of meat. I'm usually okay with chicken, but sometimes weirdly the texture of chicken will turn me off for a few weeks and then it'll be fine again.
Thought it was just me. I thought it was just me, and it's totally a texture thing.
Yeah.
Are you a texture eater naturally, or by
Yes,
okay?
Very much so. It took me a long time to eat mushrooms because of the texture.
Okay.
Now I'm fine as long as they're cooked. I don't like raw onions. There's a lot of things that
I want to dive into this texture eater thing. Like I want to do an article or a podcast about it because I'm just now thinking I am mine. And I thought about this when we talked about it before. And I think Emma is, and it's just like, when you know that you are one, and we're getting kind of off topic, but and you can adjust your diet, like you're talking about accordingly. It does help eating, because it is a struggle if you don't know what it is, but you're struggling with it. Anyway, meat is totally a texture thing for me.
Yeah, I have a lot of texture issues with food. I can't eat anything like creamy, like yogurt, cream cheese, cottage cheese, flan, like custards. I'm not into it at all.
Does it make you like gag?
Yeah.
Yeah. Cool.
Yeah.
I thought it was just me because I cannot enjoy yogurt, and I'm like, I don't know how people do it. Banana freaks me out unless it's a certain type of hard, like.
It has to be exactly the day the banana is.
Or I got
no mushy bananas.
Oh my gosh, I'm totally a texture eater. Anyway, this is another subject for another day. But anyway, meat is a total thing for texture eater because it's a certain, it has nothing to do with how it's prepared. You can prepare it any sort of way. It's the texture drives me nuts. And chicken is like that. I'll be okay, and then I'll feel like I need to take like a personal break.
Yeah, I generally am okay with fish. I can eat fish all the time.
Yeah, fish is not fine. It's not bad.
No, and I'm a salmon eater. I'm a halibut eater.
What about like shellfish and stuff? Like
shellfish,
or
it's on and off with me. It has to be cooked perfectly.
Yeah, see, seafood I find less of an issue than
yeah.
And I feel like naturally I'm helping the environment just by my texture issues, but I'm not doing it to help the planet. But now I'm like, well, now this is my new thing, because people will look at me like, you don't like this steak? I'm like, yeah, you cooked it perfectly and it tastes amazing. It has nothing to do with what you did. It's all on me.
I mean, if I'm at an event or something and they serve steak as their
sometimes it's good.
Yeah, I don't make a fuss about it. I just eat it. But I would not order one in a restaurant.
Okay.
It's not my deal. But when the kids were little and I needed to cook for a big family on a budget, we cooked ground beef a lot, and ground turkey.
Oh yeah, these are staples.
Yeah.
Chicken drumsticks you can get. Like chicken in general is a pretty cost friendly protein option. We rarely buy red meat just simply also because it's not that cheap. My husband is not a texture eater. He will eat steak all day long if he could afford it, but is not an option. So yeah, I feel like this totally makes sense when you break down the numbers and you put the percentage up there. That's a huge thing. Dairy for me would be harder to give up, although I feel like as I'm aging, my body is naturally rejecting dairy anyway. So
dairy is our next one. But if you're a steak eater, if you're a meat eater, even switching out one meat-based meal a week for a plant-based meal. They say that Oxford University did this study, and that says that if everyone in the UK swapped one red meat meal for a plant-based dinner every week consistently, they could cut the carbon footprint of the UK by 50 million tons, which is huge.
That's huge.
Yeah,
that's huge. And it doesn't mean like a plate full of cabbage. It literally could mean like, do you know how my sister-in-law is vegan and her kids are vegan and vegetarian? One's vegan, one's vegetarian, and they get a lot of really great protein source from beans and legumes. Like there's a lot of ways to and rice and lentils and stuff. You can like bulk up your meal without having to put one piece of meat on it.
Yeah,
and they can still be really filling.
There's so many meat alternatives now on the market that are really, really good, and they've really changed. I mean, I remember when the garden patty
Have you
thing
had a
came
good
out.
one? Have you
I
had
have,
really
yeah,
good
I've had a
one?
really
Okay.
good one. But I remember when they first came out, they were literally like black beans and mushrooms
It
kind of
was not
smashed
good.
into a patty
Yeah.
shape. But now, I mean, now you would not be able to tell if what's beef and what's
Taste
not.
wise?
I mean,
Taste wise?
the texture is a little different. The taste is very similar to me, at least I think. I mean, the Beyond Beef company, the Impossible Meat Company, I mean, all of these brands are really doing a great job. So
Awesome.
if you even are just interested in cutting down on your meat consumption, I mean, this is where Meatless Mondays started as a thing, was, not to push vegetarianism necessarily, but to cut down on the carbon footprint.
I feel like it's still so warped in our own minds that we're still doing it for our personal selves. A lot of people will make that swap because it's better for their heart or better for their cholesterol or better for their weight, and it's like they're still not thinking about the planet, which is not a problem. Any direction, that direction's good for the planet. But I mean, we got to think more outside ourselves, when we're making these choices.
Yeah. So if that's something that you're thinking about, if this is something that concerns you and that you're thinking that you want to try, this is a really easy one. Just one day a week, cut out, the meats from one meal, and you can make a big difference. If everybody did that, it would make a huge difference.
That's great.
Yeah. So, okay, we're going to talk about eliminating dairy or cutting back on dairy products. It's the same basic idea. Milk and cheese is another way that, you cutting out milk and cheese or cutting them back is another easy way to reduce your carbon footprint. Dairy products are the second largest contributor to greenhouse gas emissions in the food industry, only behind meat. So specifically cheese, I guess, requires a huge amount of dairy to produce, and dairy cows, are a contributor to greenhouse gas and emissions. So the manure of dairy cattle emits greenhouse gases like methane and carbon dioxide, nitrous oxide. That's what they're talking about when they say this. Ammonia is another thing. And cheese takes so much milk to produce that it has, it's actually ranks above eggs and chicken for greenhouse gas emissions.
Wow. Bummer.
Yeah, I know.
I don't like this news.
No, but if you can tolerate or enjoy the taste of like the nut-based milks and cheeses or soy-based milks and cheeses, that would definitely be something to consider. There are good brands out there now where my daughter went through a no dairy phase. She's pretty lactose intolerant. And the Daya brand has some really good ones. There's some cashew cheeses that, in my opinion, have really good texture and they melt really well and things like that. So if that's something that you consume on a regular basis, if you're a big dairy consumer, I will say this: I have not found a non-dairy ice cream that competes with real dairy ice creams. I have yet to find one that tastes the same.
I'm just going to remain silent on this whole section because I love my dairy so much, and I'm just not even, but also if life forced me to not be able to consume dairy at all, it's good to have choices and know the brands that are good. So that, because there's some really good, like I've tried gluten-free stuff and there's some good gluten-free cookies out there and there's some not so good gluten-free cookies. You know what I mean? So if you know some good brands, that would be something really good to put in our like Facebook comments at the end.
I would love to hear that.
It's one of those things where it's a hit and miss. So once you find like a winner, you're like, oh, like sometimes I'll could be consuming something like I have a cookie company that I love and it's a plant-based cookie and I eat those things and they're like the fudge Keebler fudge cookies, but it's a plant-based one and I get it at Sprouts and I absolutely love them. And I would eat them day and night and you could not tell that they were plant-based. I didn't even know when I was eating. I was like, oh, interesting. But then there's some other things that are plant-based. You're like, oh yeah, like this is from the earth, So it's good to know what's good and what's bad. So I would really appreciate that if we could.
I had so many people tell me that certain, especially ice creams are amazing, just as good. And I have to say that they are, in my opinion, are not. Like, I know everybody's so big on like the halo top.
Is it the texture?
Yeah. Or to me, there's an icy texture to non-dairy ice cream that is. I like the creamy texture of ice cream. That's why I like ice cream. It's I like it, like soft serve creamy, not not
It takes the ice
icy.
cream out of ice cream for you. when
Yeah, it
you're
takes the
eating it.
cream part and it's just icy.
It's just ice. So yeah, that's not what you came for.
No.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so, okay, the next one I think is probably easier. At least this is something that when I read it, I was like, why have I never thought of this? And I am the worst about this, like the worst. And this is the cutting down on your food waste. Food waste is a major contributor to greenhouse gas emissions. And I am the worst about it. I overbuy at the grocery store majorly. I always, have leftovers because I can never finish a restaurant portion of food. And probably 80% of the time I don't eat them. I end up throwing them away. I mean, we all are I think most people understand the idea of buying the bag of spinach that then 5 days later you need to throw away. Or
That's why all of those like fully freshly prepared portioned out meal companies exist, because that's their go-to. It's like, how much food do you throw away? How much money do you spend on takeout and then you don't eat it? It's like, yeah. Right.
Yeah,
so how do we fix that?
The average person on the planet wastes between 450 and 850 pounds of food per year, which is crazy. That's like several pounds a day of food that's being wasted per person. And the food that's thrown away just decomposes in landfills and emits methane. And I mean, obviously it's not as bad as plastic being in the landfills, but it's still pretty bad.
Oh, it also just kills my soul because of how many people go hungry every night and how much food we're literally, it's in the name, food waste.
Yes.
Kills me.
So, I mean, what are the ways that we can obviously we can compost. That's a pretty granola way of getting rid of food waste.
In a world where we're constantly not being able to afford where we live and have to be put in these, I currently live in a complex. I don't have no place to compost. You know what I mean?
And then what would you do with the composted dirt? You don't have
exactly. There's a lot of people that don't have that ability. My in-laws though have a beautiful property and they totally compost.
Yeah.
And I think it's wonderful and inspiring, but they have a huge property. I can't compost.
I have a huge vegetable and herb garden and I compost and it makes perfect sense for me, but I can see
so great.
My kids who live in apartments, no, not so much.
Stealing like their patio.
Oh, their neighbors would not appreciate that.
Yeah.
So what can we do to cut down on food waste? Obviously, like I am very guilty of overbuying at grocery store. I see things and I buy them on impulse and I don't always go off of my list. Or I'll go to Costco and buy, and it's just my husband and I in the house, way too much food for the two of us.
The fact you go to Costco and it's just you two is just ludicrous to begin with.
What it is that there are some things that I can find. I only can find at Costco. Like
I say, but so you go and you get there and then you get tempted with the I'm
not going to go all the way into Costco just to buy their tabbouleh or something, like I got to buy more stuff. So it feels like it's not a wasted trip, but I need to cut that out. Meal planning is a huge way.
That's the thing I recommend is like writing down what you're using and how much you need and checking your cabinets on what you have. That's what I just do because I can't afford to buy more butter if it's sitting in my cabinet already. So I'll check, but I also know what I'm making beforehand. I don't blindly go to the store.
Yeah. So plan your meals, plan your recipes for the week. If you're cooking for a family, if you're single or it's just, a couple, meal plan like you see people do with the containers and figuring out your meals for the week and buying just enough to make that and doing it ahead of time, or planning your meals and recipes and making your grocery list based off of that. Now, like Megan mentioned, one of the best ways to do this to eliminate waste completely is to do one of those recipe delivery services like Green Chef or HelloFresh. That's a great one. There's a few that are they deliver exactly the groceries you need and nothing else. Now, I will say this, those companies obviously produce, they have transport production, right? They have to deliver those to you, which, creates emissions with the transport and the driving each box to each house. And also there's a lot of plastic in every single one of those delivery services that I've used, except for one called Terra's. Had a ton of plastic. Every you get 3 sprigs of rosemary in a plastic bag, and then 5 tomatoes in a Ziploc.
Fresh.
Which is its own issue, right? Because the next one we're going to talk about is ditching plastic. But
yeah, and here's the other thing. You have to be realistic. If you don't have more than 20 minutes to prepare a meal every night and you're going out and buying something that's going to take 40 minutes to prepare, it's probably going to go to waste. I've done that a lot where I've wanted to make a meal and I didn't have time, and then the food is bad by the time I have time to make that meal. So like if you only have 1 to 2 nights to actually cook, then look into the meal prep services that are like $9 to $11 a meal that are in your local area that already have the meal already prepared for you. All you have to do is just heat it up and eat it, you know?
Yeah,
I feel like a lot of food waste goes from people being unrealistic with their expectations of themselves and their time.
Yeah,
and it's just a bad situation.
If you're a single person or you work outside the home and you want to be able to take your lunch to work every day, I really recommend those services. We used one called Freshly for a long time that was great, and now we use one called Cook Unity that is actually partners with local chefs, and they prepare these meals in bulk, so there is no waste, and then all you have to do is heat them up.
Yeah.
So those
just
are great.
Be realistic.
Realistic, yeah. And I mean, if you do cook more than you're going to eat, I'm the worst at this, but save your leftovers, not in plastic, and then eat them the next day. Because
and look online. Like if you just go on Pinterest or something, you can find a lot of really innovative ways to reuse your pork that from yesterday night. I feel like a lot of people just think all the only option is to just microwave it and reheat it. You can actually make a whole new meal out of your pork that is sitting in the fridge that you had left over, to where you don't have to go buy a whole new protein source. It's going to save you money,
that's true,
time, and it doesn't have to be boring. You just have to like care enough about what you're consuming. Some people are like, whatever, and then they don't eat it. Because I did that where I meal prepped, where I was like, oh, I'll just take the time and headache out of it. And then I did that. And then it was so unappealing by the time it brought it out of the fridge that it all went to waste. We all do that. So just find a way to make it appealing so that you'll eat it, because that'll cut down.
That's a hard thing for me, is that when I'm walking through the grocery store and doing my grocery shopping, I'm a completely different person than I am 2 days later. And I don't want to eat any of that.
Do you ever go to the grocery store hungry?
Oh yeah, that's the worst.
Worst. Do you ever come home having to Dan will come home and have to explain certain items, and he's like, it just looks so good. I'm like, you're hungry. Like you were just at the store hungry, and this looked good at the moment because it's so all over the place. So yeah.
When the kids were at home and they were smaller, I every Sunday I did my grocery list for the week based on the recipes that I was going to cook that week. I used a website, I think it was called Emails, what to plan out my meals for the week, and it generated a grocery list for me, and I cross-referenced it against like the store's coupons. I had a whole system. And so every Sunday I did my grocery shopping, and there was very little food waste in our house. And that was partly in the fact that I planned, but it was also partly in the fact that I had multiple teenagers at home and their friends who would just literally eat everything I bought, no matter how much I bought. Yeah. So we didn't throw away.
I also
food.
think it's because you only went once a week. I think you spend more money when you go multiple times.
Yes.
My husband loves to, he doesn't like to bulk shop. He likes to because he's like, oh, well, sometimes the meat is on sale on different days. And I'm like, yeah, but if you go, you're going to spend more money because you're going to see other things and you're going to get more tempted. And oftentimes we also don't check what's in our pantry and in our fridge currently. And you'll come home and be like, oh, now I have 2 cottage cheeses, or now I have 2 this. It's like, you just checked before. Yeah, but I mean, there's something to preparing. I feel like no matter what we talk about, no matter the subject of our podcast, it's always comes down to preparation is key, right?
Yeah, and that's hard to do if you're a busy person. Like I get that. That's why doing it on the same day, I did it Sunday mornings with the Sunday paper when there used to be coupons in it.
Because that was like your day off, right?
Yeah, well, that was just like the kids tended to sleep later in on Sunday mornings, or just like get up and watch cartoons and do their own thing on Sunday. We didn't have like soccer games Saturday. That was usually Saturdays. So Sundays was like grocery shopping day. And I made it a routine. Routines work well for me. I know they don't for everyone. So that is, just whatever of the tips that we've given you to kind of try and cut down on your food waste is really important. And then obviously everyone knew we were coming to this one, ditching plastic. Single-use plastic is really bad for the environment. We all know this. Plastic wrapping, plastic bags, plastic storage containers, that either we as consumers use or the food industry as a whole uses to pack their products for sale, it's a major contributor to greenhouse gas emissions. So I think everyone knows like there are alternatives now to plastic wrap and Ziploc bags and things like that. Yes, I understand that it's harder to, find the alternative, and sometimes they require like washing for reuse. I get it, but you are making a big contribution.
When we say it out loud, it seems silly though.
It seems silly, but
I would rather take a straw I have to clean myself that looks cute than a flippin' paper straw any day. I hate those things so much, because like some places they don't even give you the option to destroy the environment. They will just give you like a paper straw that will, break down and stuff like that. And it's like you're not halfway finished with your drink and it's just useless.
I hate paper straws. I hate them.
And then I feel bad for saying something because it's like, let's spoil the environment. I'm like, I will buy a straw. I have one of those cute ones that's like it attaches to my key ring and it like unfolds and it comes with its own little cleaner and it's so cute and it's like it's better than I hate paper straws. At the minute I saw this, I think I was at like a Justice, like a kid's store, like a Claire's, and I saw this. I was like, I need this in my life because if I have to deal with one more paper straw.
I have a stainless steel straw and I love it. I have actually a pack of them. I love them.
They're great, right? And they're cute. And your tumbler, like we can make this. The minute you make something aesthetically adorable, we're all about it. We don't need to be told anything more. We're like, oh, I was already saving the planet with my cute mason jar glass that I use all the time and my reusable water jug that I carry everywhere, which I think is great. I think having like what do they call it? It's like a self-care water jug that people bring around everywhere. It's like you're accidentally saving our environment because you're cutting down on so many plastic bottles being bought. So
absolutely. I mean,
let's make it cute.
The reusable water bottles are a big one. I think most people are on that train with us now. Yeah. I only know a handful of people who still drink out of the disposable water bottles. Everyone has their cute favorite reusable. We have a whole cabinet of reusable water bottles for ourselves, for guests who come over, because our refrigerator has a water bottle filler in the door.
It's like an emotional support water bottle.
Yeah. And it tastes, I mean, the water that's filtered through the fridge tastes really good. So
it's great because even places like, I'm a big theme park girl, and they have refill stations everywhere. They would prefer you to bring your own water bottle. They don't give you plastic straws. If you ask for a straw, they'll be like, they'll give you a paper one and then you'll never ask for a straw again. So yeah, I think it's great that we as people are like more about reusable water bottles, because I think for a while that was a really big problem. It was. I don't know about you, but my parents, like, they would always buy those like giant.
Us too.
And keep them in their car. And like I did sports and I always had my own water bottle, but they would always have those just in case. Like there was never like a station to go refill. Like it wasn't a thing when
I remember distinctly being a kid, and we always would have a glass of water, we drank Kool-Aid when I was a kid, God forbid. Right?
Cool.
But then it transitioned to everything was in single-use bottles. And I remember that was like so convenient. We thought it was so cool, and nobody gave even a thought about what that was doing to the environment. But
Gatorade was a big thing for me. Like we would always have like for sports, like, cause I played soccer and we would always have like the Gatorade just like in the cabinets, and they would buy them at Costco. So there'd be a lot of them. It was never like, oh, this is bad for the environment.
Yeah. And I had
to wait until the neighborhood gave us a recycle bin for us to start carrying as a family growing up. It wasn't a thing.
We know, like here in California, we know to bring our reusable grocery bags to the store. It became a huge habit. Everybody was sticking to it pretty well. And then COVID happened and they stopped allowing us to bring them in again. And everyone kind of went back to the old ways. So now we're back to trying to remember again, at least I'm talking about myself.
They charge you. I don't know. I mean, they
charge you 10 cents.
10 cents if you don't bring it, which, if I don't have them with me, because like COVID untrained me to bring them. Now I'm like, oh wait, you can touch my things again. That's crazy. But they'll charge you. And I think it's great that we're trying to get people to bring them back in again. Cause that was such a big movement. And there's so many plastic bags that just get wasted. I try and use them to line my trash liner with, or like store stuff with, like I'll use them to store stuff. Like I have like a bin on the side where I keep my trash, where I have all these, I have a lot of them, but like I try and find another use for them, but that's something I got to work on.
Yeah, we use them repeatedly if we do have them in the house, paper or plastic, because we have a little orchard here on the property, not in this house. But people, when they come over, we're like, please take a bag of fruit. We have so much.
People look at you like you're crazy too, huh? When I lived with my in-laws, they have a lot of lemons, and I'll be like, I'll give like anyone who came over a ton, they'll be like, okay.
Yeah,
but
people are like, okay, thanks.
For this lemons and these 3 eggs.
For this bag of fruit and this dozen eggs. Exactly. And also, I know this might not, kind of click with everyone, but you don't have to use those thin plastic bags in the produce section.
No,
you can literally just put your produce loose on the tray.
Think people don't know that. I don't ever use them, and I don't either. They can bring them up without the bags.
I see people put 1 tomato in that bag on the thing, and I'm like, why though?
Do you want to know something that it's going to make me sound so cheap and so poor? But even before kids, Dan, my husband, taught me that the bag, especially when you tie it and make a knot, adds weight. So if you have it, you're adding weight and adding money to that's why I'll take the vines off of the tomatoes, because that's added weight. But I just got used to not using the bags because it just added weight. And also so unnecessary. You're totally right. 1 tomato for a bag. If it's like, oh, you don't want it to touch the box of Cheez-Its in your
That's what's funny though, is because they separate all the things with these thin plastic bags so that they don't touch, but then we go home and we put it all into a fruit bowl and it all touches,
and it doesn't protect it or keep it safe from being squished. There's no purpose for it other than, and oh, by the way, the cashier doesn't need you to separate it for her to do her job. It's not helping her either. So why
I don't know.
Why? Now I'm wondering why we use them.
But they do make the mesh ones that you can buy like on Amazon or at the grocery store. Sometimes they have them on display that you can use if you really like to bag your fruit or your produce.
Yeah, so those are worried about keeping it like contained. Yeah. I don't know, but if you need to do that, they do have reusable mesh ones that are for sale. The plastic containers, like in my house growing up, if we bought something that came in plastic, like a country crock butter or yogurt or anything like that, we saved the container and washed it in the dishwasher and then reused it for leftovers. Like my fridge as a kid would have a bunch of containers that looked like we were stocked up on like butter and cottage cheese and yogurt, and they would be full of leftovers from that week. I don't know if that's weird, but that's how we did it in my family. Or we kept like the jars that our jam came in and stuff and used them as drinking glasses. Like we would reuse everything. That. And now that's cool. So it's okay. Yeah, no, but it's smart. I mean, it's saves money, and it's also smart and reuses something that's a perfectly good container. You can just put a Sharpie on it and write,
I can remember many Saturday mornings of myself making toast for breakfast and opening like 6 containers looking for butter because it all said butter and none of it was butter.
Oh, the country crocks that were like, yeah, I remember that.
Like, yesterday's spaghetti, the day before is baked beans and no butter. I would be so annoyed.
Which to me, like it saves money on like the plastic end, but also how do you know what's in the containers and how do you know what to eat and how do you know how to plan that out? I feel like it goes to waste because you can't see what's inside.
Yeah, we have at my house now, we have glass leftover containers. And we label them. We just put a piece of tape on it and label it with what it is and the date that we put it in the fridge. Yeah. Because we're really, really careful with expiration dates. So yeah, we label them. But when I was a kid, it didn't happen like that.
Oh gosh, no. I think it took you, might have taken you teaching me that every 2 weeks you look through the fridge and look at the dates and then you throw out. We did not do that as kids. I think like somebody obviously took care of it because I never got sick, but now that's so ingrained in me because things go quickly.
And we go through our pantry and we move the older stuff when we put new groceries away, we move the older stuff forward and put the new groceries in the back. So if it's canned goods or packaged stuff, that's been my routine my whole adult life. I don't know who taught me that.
Thank you for raising me, by the way. Appreciate that, because like it really does save me a lot of like it can get really gross, you know.
Yeah.
And I noticed that like older generation people do not do that.
They don't do it.
I don't want to be rude, but like my dad's and my in-laws, when I lived with my in-laws for 2 years, I just got in a habit of just naturally checking every day, because this stuff was like it's
Very old.
2000, and the Bush was in office.
Yeah.
Like, pick one of the Bushes. Yes, that's the answer to that. That he was in office when that was like not expired. It's so now I just look, because who knows what it is. But there's something really good and therapeutic and like clean. And then you start to also, when you're throwing the stuff away, you're seeing how much waste you're actually doing, because like that stuff was perfectly edible when you bought it and you had a plan for it and it was appealing at the time, and now you're throwing it away. So sometimes when I'm emptying out my fridge and my pantry and I'm like, some of it's like honestly totally full, and I just feel
really bad,
awful about it, because I'm wasting food that was good. There's people that are hungry, the environment, all those things. So there is something really good about that practice, because if you are one that like, I think I might be in this category, but I'm not sure. Go through your pantry, go through your fridge, and in the 2 weeks, and see how much you're throwing away. Because if it's not a lot, then you're doing great. If it's a lot, then you might want to rethink how you're buying your food.
Right. And being aware of expiration dates in general, when you get into that practice, it really, like, I check the expiration date even in the grocery store before I put it in my cart.
Yes.
Because if I know I'm buying lunch meat and it's just my husband and I know how often we usually eat lunch meat, it's not that often, I will purposely look for the one with the latest expiration date so that I don't have to throw it away as quickly. And maybe someone else who has a big family and makes sandwiches for them every day for school will buy the one with the sooner expiration date, because to them, it doesn't matter. They'll use it well before that. So being aware of that can help just avoid some of the food waste, for sure.
True. Like it's just the way you sort your pantry and your fridge is the same way a store stores their stuff. They push the stuff that's going to expire sooner to the front. So if you know that you don't drink as much milk, but you need milk, then buy one of the milks towards the back that has a later expiration date, so that you're not throwing away milk and wasting milk. So it's just a good practice when you're buying things to look at dates as well.
Yeah. Somebody's shopping with a 1.5-year-old who drinks milk all day long and is going to use
that. Yeah. It won't go to waste in the store. I wonder how much store food waste is put into play with this. Like, I mean, I've heard horror stories of certain.
No, I've watched those TikTok videos of the dumpster divers, like pulling things out of perfectly good stuff out of the dumpsters.
No, I mean, I know people that have work in certain areas of like certain high-end food, like grocery store chains, that tell me how much food they are told by their company to throw away, because like the perishable things have like, it can only be out of its environment that it was cooked in for like 20 minutes until it starts to like go bad. So they can't bring this food that wasn't used at the salad bar or something like that, so to speak, to like people in need, because some of it is perishable. But because that's your first thought, is like, why aren't you taking this perfectly good food and giving it to someone in need?
Well, and if it's the day of the expiration date, you also cannot donate it. Like,
it's awful.
Expired. You know? Even if we all know that we'll be fine for several days afterwards.
Oh my gosh. How much questionable food have we eaten? And we're like, oh, I don't know that.
It's like, all right.
Whatever. Yeah, but it's like people in actual need cannot be given this food because
it's too much liability. Yeah, it's too much liability.
I hate it. So it's food waste. So it's food waste. And these are major supermarkets every single day that are having to throw away food that people aren't consuming or buying, and they can't donate to a better place because of these laws, which, I mean, who am I to say? It's probably for a good reason. I don't want to get anyone sick, but I'm just saying, like, there's got to be a way for this food to be utilized before it's just considered a part of the problem. You know?
Yeah. Well, I think there's something in the health industry that everyone has kind of heard. I think most of our readers or listeners will have heard this. It's something nutritionists tell you, and people who are in the wellness and health industry will tell you: when you go to the grocery store, avoid the middle and shop from the edges, right? They always tell you that, because those edges are the freshly made foods and meats, the
fruits, your
produce, meats, dairy, like, avoid the processed center of the grocery store. So that is in line with our next tip, which is to avoid processed foods. And this one, I know I need to do that for my health, but I didn't think about it as far as the carbon footprint. but it makes sense that the more processing of food has to go through in order to get to the finished product, the more greenhouse gas emissions is being emitted, because anything that has to be cooked, obviously you're using power in whether that's gas or electricity or whatever to cook it. You're using, if it has to be canned or boxed or cooked and then dried out again, dehydrate, whatever it is, like there's a whole process to that is its own factory emissions, right? So that's something that hadn't really occurred to me that much, but it makes sense when you think about it.
Yeah, no, it's such a bummer, because if you think about the times when we were all farming and living off the land, I mean, these machines didn't exist. So the carbon footprint was like next to nothing. But the more opportunity we have to create these things, the more of like, the less we get of the other things that we, took for granted. It's a give and get, right?
Right. I mean, if you think about buying a can of green beans, for example, versus buying them in the produce section, the green beans have to be taken from the farm, right, and taken to a factory where they are then cooked and then cooled off and canned and then shipped back. I mean, there's so much transportation and so much, factory processing there that while the nutritional value may not go down that much, the environmental impact definitely does. And also, how we cook food also contributes. I know the raw food movement is getting very popular. Raw veganism is something that I see all the time, and I'm not suggesting anyone who doesn't already feel inclined to go that way, going that way, because it is a huge change in lifestyle.
It's a bit of a shock to your
bit
system
of a shock
if it's not what you're used to.
But when you turn on your oven to bake or roast or cook something inside the oven, the majority of the energy that oven is using is not going towards cooking your food. It actually heats all the air around it. It actually, they say that only 6 to 12% of the energy use is going to actually cook your food, which is a lot of lost utility, right? It's the cost of it. It's the actual, those are renewable kind of energy sources, but not easily renewable, not like, just eating something raw. They say the most efficient way to cook things is to cook them on the stove top, because the heat is directly just produced in that small area that is focused on the pan that is on the stove, versus when you heat up the oven, you're heating up the entire oven and all the air around the oven, and it's a different thing.
What about an air fryer?
Air fryer is probably, like they say, the microwave is the most efficient way to cook because it uses 50% less energy than an oven. And I would guess that the air fryer is probably right in line with that.
Because the air fryer is like cool and trendy, and I use my air fryer for everything now. They
cook everything quicker. They don't heat up the whole room and everything around it. I mean, it's a small space, so I assume it's more like a microwave. I would prefer an air fryer over a microwave, because I don't think microwave energy is really that healthy for you.
No, I never use my microwave.
No, but the air fryer I do use a lot, especially now that it's just the two of us, because I can cook just the right amount without needing to heat up the entire oven.
Yes.
So I like that, and it's faster. So because you have to preheat the oven and you have to put the thing, I mean, it's
a lot of work. And so when you have an air fryer and you're not cooking like a whole pizza or something like that, it's such a great alternative. Then that totally makes sense. That's why I was curious if that was equivalent to, say, a microwave, because I'm new to the air fryer thing, but I mean, it's ready to go to cook something in a minute, or less. So it's great.
Okay. So the last 3 tips that we're going to give are all kind of related. And that is something that we talked about on the previous podcast episode about eating seasonally and eating locally sourced food. But this is something where we're going to talk about a concept called food miles. And we touched on it a little bit in that episode, but food miles are basically the distance that our food has to travel in order to get to our plate. And, whether it's a transport truck, a boat, a plane, or a train, food that travels a long distance is naturally worse for the environment. It just makes sense. I mean,
think about it.
Think about it. So a lot of that produce that is shipped, any way you ship it, has to also be refrigerated. And that it really increases the CO2 emissions for that product. There are some exceptions to that, like bananas do have to travel a really far distance because we don't really grow bananas here in the United States, but they don't need to be refrigerated, and they can be picked so early that they ripen in transit, so that they can be shipped by boat, which is one of the slower and less emissions kind of transportation, where things like berries that spoil very, very quickly, and asparagus is a big one, that are usually grown in like South American countries. They are actually air flighted to the US, which is the worst, I mean, the carbon emissions that you can cause. So the best thing to do is to buy locally, buy seasonally. Hopefully, I mean, we are very blessed to live in California, where we have a robust agriculture community and farmers markets and organic growers and those, you know, farm co-op boxes and all things like that. It's a really big deal. I know not everyone is fortunate enough to have those options, but there are companies that do that. Like Imperfect Foods is one of them, which reduces food waste for one, and also, you know, they try to source it as locally and as seasonally as possible. Or there was another produce, farm fresh produce, which we touched on in the last one, is another good one. But farmers markets are great because things are usually sold in smaller quantities, so you can buy just what you need for that week, and you're buying it from a local person. You can ask them questions on their production methods, or how, you know, how their farm is run, if that's important to you. That it's a really nice way to support your local community, and it's a really nice way to cut back on the
life is what you make it. I've said it before. It's like the farmers market is one of those things where if you make a day of it, oh, it can be so therapeutic and nice. Like, and there's something really cool about like visiting the people that grew the berries that you're going to get. They know so much about the fruit, and there's always samples for you to try, so you can actually try the produce that you're eating like in person, and you just get so much more attached to the food that you're consuming, and it becomes that much more special when you eat it. You know, I don't know. I feel like when I'm eating the fruit that I picked at the farmer's market, I almost feel like I was a part of that process, rather than mindlessly going to like a major grocery chain and just grabbing the same fruit.
Absolutely.
I don't know what it is, but it's a totally different experience, and it makes me want to be more aware of like the whole process, you know, from
and that's something that we want to talk about when we're talking about eating seasonally, because I've found that when I go to the farmers market, obviously everything you're going to find at the farmers market is seasonal. It's what's in season at that time in your local area. And I found a lot of fruits and vegetables that I wasn't that familiar with, and I can ask them questions like, how would you prepare this? You know, and they'll let you try it. Sometimes if it's a fruit or vegetable that you can eat raw, they will, you know, cut one open and let you try it, and they'll give you ideas on how to cook it, how to serve it. So that's really helpful for me, where I mean, in the grocery store, I'd have to be like Googling that, and
they don't know anything. You're going to ask the grocery guy, like restocking the carrots, if he knows anything about what the carrots have been up to. No, he doesn't know. It's really, really cool. You know, do it once and you'll go back every time. You know? It's not an everyday thing, but you can do it when they're available to you.
Yeah, there are websites that list like all the farmers markets in your area by day of the week. So that's really helpful. And I want to say too, that when we buy food that isn't seasonal in the grocery store, if we're buying berries and in winter and apples in, you know, the end of summer, things when they're opposite of the season that they're in, they have to be treated with chemicals in order to travel the distance that they have to travel, and in order to, or be stored for the period of time that they're stored until they're sold. They say the average apple in the supermarket off season is 14 months old. We are buying a 14-month-old fruit that has been treated with you know, chemicals. Apples are generally stored with high levels of carbon dioxide, and it slows ripening. And they get treated with fungicides so that they don't rot. I mean, there's a lot of stuff that it happens to the produce to get it so that we can have watermelons in December, and we can have, you know, these fruits that are not ripe in the season that we want to buy them. And, you know, we've gotten kind of spoiled and used to that, but if we it's better for our bodies to eat seasonally, right? There are certain vegetables and fruits that come out each season of the year for a reason, because a lot of times they're the things that our bodies need in that season. They're, you know, citrus fruits and other vegetables that are high in vitamin C tend to come out at a time of the year where we are not getting as much, you know, vitamin C from our environment or whatever. And there's just a lot to it. Anyway, we talked about it on that podcast.
Yeah, we did. No, but like there's a reason for it. Stop trying to like cheat science. You know, there's a reason that and also the food, the end result tastes way better when it's in season. You can tell the difference between like an out of season watermelon versus an in season watermelon. It's like, do you really want it? Okay. You know.
But when you take into account the carbon dioxide, the fungicides, the amount of fertilizer it takes to grow things in greenhouses when it's not the season for them, or transport them from such a far distance, you can clearly see that there's going to be a huge environmental impact to eating off season. So if you can start paying attention to what's in season at what time of year in your local environment, the best way, again, is farmers markets, because you don't have to guess. Everything there is going to be in season. And if you do want to buy produce in your local grocery store and eat organically, that's, I know it's more expensive and that sucks, but there are, you know, for health benefits, eating organically makes sense. We're talking about fruits and vegetables that you don't need to peel specifically. Obviously, if you're peeling off like a banana, if it's been treated with something, it's not quite as bad as like a strawberry, because you're peeling the skin that will have had the topical stuff sprayed on it off before you eat it. There's a lot of health benefits to eating organically, but the carbon footprint is also so much smaller. It's crazy. There's so many tons of carbon that are put into the soil in order to make the fruits and vegetables grow at different rates. So if we can cut some of that out, it helps the environment as well as helps our bodies.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
But obviously, as our last tip is going to tell you, the best way to do that is to grow your own. And again, we know not everybody can do that. People are in apartments with very small or no patios. People are, you know, living in with roommates and renting rooms. And the real estate market right now is, I don't even know how to describe it other than hell, because I just went through this trying to find a place for my daughter and her fiance, and it is insane out there right now. Like, I could not believe it. I knew I'd heard all the news stories about how the real estate market prices are through the roof, but I hadn't actually been shopping for anything.
Oh, it's
wow.
It's a nightmare. The fact that I even found a place when I found a place, which was still bad when we were looking, is a nightmare. So yeah, it's awful.
Yeah, I am extremely fortunate. I know I am so blessed to have a big vegetable and herb garden on my property. It wasn't intentional. We built it. It wasn't there when we bought the property. It's intentional. It's a place that brings me a great amount of joy and relaxation, but also makes me really happy to be able to prepare a meal with food that I cooked. I mean, food that I grew myself. Like, that's crazy. And I've learned so much in the process because I had never had a garden before. And I worked with a great like garden instructor who taught me a lot, and natural ways to fertilize the soil, different things to do to keep pests away without having to spray any kind of a herbicide or anything on the plants. I've learned so much, and when I'm able to like go out to the garden and get all the ingredients I need to make a salad and then serve it, it just brings me so much joy. So if you have the opportunity to grow your own, whether that's, a potted fruit tree or those vertical plant stands that they have like for patios and stuff now that grow tomatoes, and then off season they'll grow strawberries.
Totally. They have alternatives for small spaces now that are really cool.
Yeah. The kids bought me an aqua garden for the kitchen counter last Christmas. And I grew herbs in that thing for almost a year until we were renovating the house and stepped away from it.
I've never heard of an aqua garden.
Yeah, you buy the little seed pods and it has a light over the top of it, and it was like a foot wide. I'm doing hand motions, but if you're listening to that, that's not helpful. It was like a foot wide and at the highest point a foot tall, and I had it right behind my kitchen sink, and I grew peppers in it. I grew herbs. I grew all kinds of stuff. It was very cool. Great gift. Cool. I think they got it on Amazon. I think it was called like the Aquasphere, Aqua something. I'll try to link it if I can find it. but you don't need a ton of space if you're just growing some herbs. If you, want to try beyond that, my mother-in-law has an apartment, and her patio is covered in plants, and she grows flowers and she grows vegetables and fruits. It's very cool to see what she's done with such a small space. It makes her very happy. So I know not everyone has like the space for a big vegetable garden and an orchard. Like we have a crazy amount of space. We had to do something with it. But growing your own food and understanding it also I have to say this, it has given me a very different perspective when I go to the grocery store, because I tried so hard to get tomatoes for like 2 years before I really had a decent tomato. And then I was like a handful of cherry tomatoes. I was like, look,
that's so much
did.
Respect for the farmers that get it done, because it's not an easy process to make a tomato.
No. And when you've put so much
yeah.
hard work into it, and you've got like 3 zucchinis or something, when you go to the grocery store and you're shopping, you're just going to be more mindful of not wasting, because the effort that went into it, even if it wasn't your own effort. And plus, like if I grew something, we are eating that. We are not throwing that away.
Absolutely. And I just finished writing an article for us that talks about how to get kids more into gardening. And that's something I touched on, that if you have the space to grow even small things like little peppers or the process that the child sees of how long it takes to get to that, it tastes so much better, and they grow a respect, and then they don't waste. Because it's really hard to get kids to eat things sometimes. And a lot of that waste goes into play, because not a lot of parents will, successfully get the food down their gullet sometimes, So if they have a respect for homegrown natural foods, then they may tend to want to eat it more too, and waste less food.
Yeah, that's very, very true. And, I know growing up and historically, like in the suburban areas, the grass lawn has been kind of everyone's go-to for how to use their space. But we are seeing a bigger move away from that, because first of all, just growing and maintaining grass is
maintaining
not great
a
for
lot
the environment.
is ridiculous and expensive.
It's expensive, and it's really not great for the environment. So if you can create a space where you can grow some of your own foods, and they have a lot of videos online about how to make it aesthetically pleasing and acceptable to your HOA and all these things, or how to, do a little permaculture garden in your backyard. It's also great for the pollinators, the bees and the butterflies and birds and things that need that in order to, survive. Yeah. We're having a major bee shortage, which is something I never thought would come out of my mouth, but we are having a bee shortage.
We've had a bee shortage for a couple of years now. Yeah. And there's a few companies that's all they do, they dedicate their time. And I've been asked to, advocate for one. I think it's never something I thought of, but what bees do. I'm not talking, this isn't like, oh, we don't have a honey shortage. We have a bee shortage. They do so much more than produce honey. So if you can do something personally that could help another situation that's also related to the environment, that might not be a carbon footprint, but is helping the bee shortage situation go up, that's even better too. You're like helping multiple things at once by planting this thing.
Yeah, absolutely. I do have the vegetable garden, and around the edges of that, I've done a cutting garden, because I like to have fresh flowers in my house. And that also, like, I've noticed how many hummingbirds and bees and butterflies are in that area. Not only is it's so lovely to sit there and watch them because they're beautiful, but also when the flowers are kind of towards the end of their life cycle, I'll cut, and then I'll have fresh flowers in the house, which is really nice. And usually, flowers should be transported from flower farms, again, emissions, right? So it's another way to use your space. If it's not something maybe you want to tend to a huge vegetable and herb garden, you can do wildflowers grow really easily. Obviously, that's why they're wild. And there's so many varieties that are really beautiful, that if you want to, leave them out there for the birds and the bees and the butterflies for a while, and then cut them and bring them in the house, it's so nice.
Multi-use for this situation.
Yeah, exactly. It's super nice. And some of those are edible flowers are another whole thing that I think are cool. And people, you can find them in the really high-end grocery stores, but when I have dinner parties and stuff, I have grown some where I'll do edible flowers in the salad, and it always gets like so many comments.
I saw some beautiful TikTok video where somebody took edible flowers on top of like a goat cheese log and pressed it with like saran wrap and made this really pretty like display on top. But she store-bought them, and I was like, I wonder how you can just grow? Like, why do you just, because they're all packaged all pretty. And I'm like, oh, that's so like high end. But yeah, that's really cool. My father-in-law taught me that if you take like a shallow bowl and put marbles in it and then fill it like a fourth of the way with water and put it next to where the bees like to go, that's like a drinking fountain for the bees. They like to sit on top. They like to sit on top of the marbles and sip on the water. Cause I was like, what is this? And cause they have a whole section of their garden area that is just dedicated towards plants that attract bees and help the bees, cause they're trying to help the
pollinators. Yeah.
So he has that out there, and it's a very shallow dish with marbles in it, and then like some water, and that's what it's like a bee drinking fountain, like a hummingbird bath, but for bees.
Wow.
I
never heard that before.
Yeah, but it's something to
try
help
that.
them because they get dehydrated, I guess. I'm like, oh, it's like a bee drinking fountain. That's adorable.
Yeah, I have to try that. I've never heard it. That's very cool.
Yeah. Anyway.
Well, this was kind of a fun topic for Earth Day. I hope, I learned a lot in researching this topic that I hadn't thought of before. I mean, I know we touched on the eat seasonally. Meat eating wasn't really my deal, but the food waste is something that is going to be a new goal for me to work on. I am a very, very guilty of that. So I think probably everyone listening to this, something we said resonated with them as an area they could work on. I hope it did. It did for me.
Yeah, enough to do something. I feel like we know there's a lot of things that we do. I got to put those bags back in my car. So every single time I go shopping, I'm not asking for plastic bags, like I know some things I need to do. It's just a very good reminder. And again, if in our Facebook group, if there are products that you are consuming that are just delicious, that are vegan or not or non-dairy specific, or a meat alternative, like share away, because like I said, there's some hits and misses out there.
And we'd also love to hear about your experience with the recipe boxes or the freshly made meal delivery services, or other companies like Imperfect Foods that maybe we haven't heard about. We'd love to hear about that. So go to Facebook and search She's a Full-On Monet, and on our page there, you'll find also our discussion group where you can leave these types of comments, because we will have a whole series of articles coming out on Earth Day, Megan's birthday, about like sustainability and, plant-based recipes, things like substitutions you can make that will help the earth. So this is a great time of year to kind of set a resolution for that for the next 12 months. And hopefully we all can do our part to save our planet.
Right. I want some of our Earth days to be one of those. I feel like we're all like Mother Earth connected on one day every single year. Like we're all about it. And then like check in 8 weeks later and we're like, oh yeah, I'm back to my old ways. Like make a commitment that can last until the next Earth Day, and then you can pick a new category to work on. That's
I think that should be our new thing, is like making a New Year's resolution on Earth Day, but making it for something sustainable that you're going to plan to do that year, and have it be challenging enough that it makes an impact, but not so challenging that you give up after like a week.
I feel like Earth Day is a day where we're all aware, but we're not actually making active change that's long lasting. Like, you know what I mean? Like we all try for a day or two because it's like, oh, Earth Month. And then we're like on to something else, Yeah. Like, got to be something more than that to make a real impact, if that's what we're here for.
Right. So I know mine is going to be cutting food waste, which is going to be a big one, but I'm committed. So
same.
All right, guys. Thank you for joining us, and we'll see you again next week.
Bye.
Bye.
Thanks so much for listening to this week's episode. Don't forget to bookmark our site, she'safullonmonet.com, and subscribe to our newsletter. You can also find us on Instagram, Facebook, and YouTube. If you're enjoying this podcast, it helps us a lot if you can follow, rate, and review. See y'all next week.